In this lesson, we are going to solve quadratic equations. Quadratic equations being equations that contain an x squared. We're going to use the zero principle to solve quadratic equations. What you want to do is set your equation equal to 0, factor it, and then use that factorization to help solve that equation. Now, when we factor, we know that one of the factors is going to be equal to 0 because the only way to get something equal to 0 by multiplying is by multiplying by 0. This will make more sense as we go through these problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2x squared to both sides. So I have 0 equals 2x squared plus 8x. Now I'm going to factor out a 2x from both of these terms. So the zero principle tells us that either 2x is equal to 0 or x plus 4 is equal to 0. So we're going to solve for x for both of these, and both numbers will be the solution to this quadratic equation. Dividing both sides by 2, we get x equals 0 as our first solution. Subtract 4 on both sides and we get x equals a negative 4 as our second solution. Looking at number 2, I'm going to subtract 3x and subtract 28 from both sides so that everything is on one side of the equation. Now I'm going to have to use product sum to factor this. Our product is negative 28 times 1, which is negative 28. Our sum is negative 3. We know that it's going to be two numbers that are relatively close together, and we know the larger number is going to be negative. So I will choose negative 7 and positive 4, and that does add up to negative 3. So those are our factors. So the zero property tells us that either x minus 7 equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. So I'm going to solve both of those equations. On this side I get x equals 7 as our first solution. On this side I get x equals negative 4 as our second solution. Lastly, I am going to pull everything on one side of the equation, so I'm going to add 2x and subtract 9. And that is all equal to 0. I'm going to have to use product sum again. Our product is negative 5 times 2, which gives us a negative 10. Our sum is negative 3. So it's going to be the larger of the two factors is going to be negative. So I will have a negative 5 and a 2. Don't feel bad if you don't get these as fast as me. I am just practicing under the assumption you already know how to do product sum. So we're going to split out our b. So we have 2x squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 5 equals 0. I'm going to factor out an x here. There's no common factor, so I'm going to factor out a 1 over here. Now I'm going to factor out a 2x minus 5. And I'm left with x plus 1. The zero principle tells us that either 2x minus 5 equals 0 or x plus 1 equals 0. So 2x equals 5, adding 5 to both sides. So x equals 5 halves, or x equals negative 1. Both are solutions to this quadratic problem.